Good science, by definition, allows for more than one opinion. Otherwise, you merely have the will of one man, which is the basis of cult.
If it's not in frame, it doesn't exist.
I'm as mad as hell, and I'm not gonna take this anymore!
I'm funny how? I mean funny like I'm a clown and you lose it?
Where you been?
Drunk. Wendy. Darling. Light of my life.
What's your one purpose in life?
To explode, of course.
I like death with sex. How about you, Casey? You like sex with death?
Yeah, so fuck up and die.
Why can't they make a phone that's smaller? Is this going on the pod? Don't put this on.
Probably
Don't
not.
put this on it. Okay, good. I don't want this to be on there.
They
I don't want
do
to.
that.
I don't want to discuss our cell phone problems
Well-
right before we get deep into this.
See,
I can't even pretend.
if we lived in, 1868
Yeah.
Texas, we wouldn't have to
Yeah.
worry about cell phones, bud, or anything.
No, bud. And you know what?
We
You
just
know
have
what
to
really
worry
bums
about
me out?
the native threat.
We'd be so racist if we lived in the 1868, dude. I hate to say it, but I'm sure, like, we're white. It's not like we would have been raised with
Oh,
anyone.
no,
who's-
of course not.
we
Well,
wouldn't have been raised with anyone
Pablo,
who's
the
like-
other day, this is the Coldest Cinema Knowledge podcast. This with my and Jordan. We're not
Yeah.
we're not racist.
We hate racists.
But
why do we have to keep watching movies?
thank
with such
you
glorious racists.
Thank you to Victoria and Pablo who did the last week's podcast episode with us.
Yes,
Pablo-
you guys were fantastic.
So go listen to that. But Pablo was talking to me last night. I was talking about the Searchers with Pablo last night while we were playing Hunt, and he was like, "Whatever, your ancestors probably owned fucking slaves," and I was like, "No, dude,
Right.
my ancestors were way too poor, but they wished they owned slaves, probably."
Right.
But
I mean, the amount of lineage that or whatever, since you and I, and we're both from Salt Lake City, Utah, and we're both from, well, whatever, it doesn't matter where you're from, but we're from, because you're not Utah, but anyways, Jesus Christ, they're, what do we call it? Oh my God, now I'm genealogy. So genealogy is huge in Utah, all the Mormons, and we did mine genealogy back, and I don't know, we didn't get to slave owners because, like you said, the wealth gap was wild.
exactly.
We're like
The only
from like
thing-
Idaho or something, some dirt farmers.
Yeah, the only thing I know for sure is that one of my like great grandpa or whatever, all my relatives were original Mormon pioneers, so we're old school Westerns, but they were like the fucking the assistant of Brigham Young's assistant. Like they worked for Brigham Young for sure.
They were having those dog piles, dude. They were
they were
there at
probably
Brigham Young and all his
cleaning up,
concubine.
trying to rush out his 13-year-old child bride and be like, all right,
I was just
let's
about to
clean
say,
up
yeah,
in
he's-
here.
Yeah, he's like, oh my God, whatever he's doing with those poor children.
Anyway,
But,
we're sorry if we're rambling. We're recovering. We're trying to get back to normal because we're still a little bit askew.
the last like four episodes we said we're getting back to form, but I don't even know where form is anymore.
This is the
where do I
first time
exist?
we've only had to watch. I still got to do the poll and everything to get back on track. But so today we're November is Western Movie Month.
Yes, nailed it, dude.
So,
First try.
It always is. I like to come down off of all my horror movies, settle in, put on my old dusty spurs, and get on with that. So I did the poll with a lot of kind of classic Westerns to kind of just get them out. And I'm not necessarily surprised that The Searchers won, but I'm surprised Unforgiven only got one vote.
Right. No, that is wild. Was that your vote? Whose vote was that?
I have no idea. I actually voted for The Searchers because it's the only one I haven't seen.
Right. Same. I have not seen this movie. So I'm like, it's double-edged because I'm happy that it won so that I can now cross this off my list. But I'm also very surprised at how highly regarded this film is.
Yeah, it's I feel like a lot of people who are like, oh my God, a 10 out of 10 masterpiece, the likes of which we've never seen. I feel like they're being really forgiving. You know what I mean?
Yeah. Well, it's so weird because I guess I can understand the time period. Maybe it is it's stunning and it's very sophisticated in the filmmaking for
yeah, like-
1956. Sure.
Oh, absolutely. Like, I mean,
And-
Scorsese cites this as like one of his biggest influences, and it's like,
Well, it's like
that makes
Spielberg,
sense.
clearly,
Oh, yeah.
he just made his fucking, what was that? The Feeblemans or whatever. That's like
Yeah.
that's like a love letter to fucking Ford. So it's
yeah,
like
John Ford is
the-
literally in it, played by David Lynch, which is excellent.
and is his like, that's his like muse, his god. That's his you know. So
Well, and
he's like
he's
giving
just,
him.
I mean,
credit.
John Ford, credit where credit's due. It's like he is such a good, fucking old school, golden age Hollywood director, and for better or worse, like he fucking nails it. But like I don't know, like that's just not my kind of western. I've decided, you know what I mean?
No, I mean this is. But see, that's what's so funny is we don't like archetype westerns. We don't like the cowboys versus Indians. That's what like all the westerns were from like 1930 to 1960. Like
Yeah,
you know, they
until
were all
Sergio
like,
Leone,
you know, until Sergio Leone.
and Clint Eastwood came along and kind of did more of like the grimy, not quite anti-western yet, but like you know they got more into the like because everything else is very much white hat, very nostalgic, very clean. Like look back at like, oh, look how simple and wholesome everyone was back then. But then that's not the case. They're fucking
they're like
dirty
eating soup
and,
out of an Indian skull, and you're like, Jesus Christ! Like I don't know, they're just like it's so funny to watch a movie. I mean, I understand it's like how it's so weird though, man. Even then, I'm like. The Confederacy was like so fly. I don't understand. Like, I guess people loved fucking Dukes of Hazzard. Like, the Confederate flag was on fucking everybody's wallet back then. Like, I just, you know, it's like, I just, even for the time period, like 56, it's like, they were like supporting, like they were celebrating the Confederacy. I understand it's based off a book.
That's
it's just kind of odd to be like.
That's honestly my biggest qualm with the movie, and we'll get into it a little bit more. My biggest qualm is that it's just like, this is supposed to take place in the late 1800s, and it's like, oh, yeah, I mean, obviously the late 1800s were a time of violence and turmoil between settlers and Native Americans for obvious reasons, but, and so, like, the conflict makes sense, but the film itself feels so 1950s with its very, it feels like puritanical fucking 1950s, like America, you know what I mean? Like, we had to kill them goddamn Indians. They were on our land. This is God's country.
Yes, exactly. Oh my God, it really is, dude. There's like the dad's got like a fucking pipe, and he's just like he's like a German immigrant, and he's like oh, this land's going to shit, and it's like, buddy, you just still exist, man. That's a bummer.
Anyway, I don't know.
Synopsis?
I'm pretty sure it is me. I was gonna write one and then I forgot it. So, but I'll give you a quick rundown for if you have not seen The Searchers and you're kind enough to grace us with your presence anyway, or if maybe you're only briefly aware of it and want to listen anyway, or you watched it in the 50s and you're actually 100 years old, and you're like, if you're that case,
for some reason you're like Jean-Luc Godard and you love this movie. I just I'm like, and then their movies, all these people don't make movies that are like this. So anyways.
So The Searchers, right? So it follows Ethan, I forget his last name, but played by John Wayne. He shows back home at his brother's ranch, where he's got, a couple nieces and nephew. He's been gone. It's 3 years after the end of the Civil War. He's been gone he's got a mysterious background, probably something shady from the looks, from his, he's probably out. One of those roving gangs that's going around the South killing Native Americans, which was happening after the Civil War.
Right. Taking random bounties.
Yeah, it's sort of implied he might be one of those because he's like, I don't quit, and so the Confederacy, they didn't lose. I just never stop anyway because he's got his great.
Right. And he's got some like unmarked gold or whatever.
Yeah, he's definitely like a brigand or something. He's like kind of shady, but he shows up back at this house and like reunites with his family. And it's like, oh, that's all fine and dandy. And then they're like, oh, there might be some Comanche in the area. And some cattle get stolen from a nearby ranch. And the men and the surrounding families and the priest or the reverend / Texas Ranger, they go to investigate. and it turns out it was sort of a ruse to get them away from the houses. So they go back to the house, and oh no, it was attacked by Native Americans and burned down, and everyone was murdered. His whole family was murdered, except for they don't have the bodies of the 2 younger girls. Along with him is the family's sort of like adoptive son. I forget his name. It's like Marcus or something.
It's Martin Pauly.
Martin.
I'm looking at the whatever it's called.
So Martin's there, and he's 1/8 Native American, and Ethan, John Wayne's character, hates him for that because he fucking hates all Native Americans. He thinks they're savages and idiots, and
he hates every race.
He hates everyone
in this movie, fictiously and in real life. So it's kind of just
he just wandered
it just marries perfectly.
Yeah, it does really feel like he just kind of like John Wayne never took off his costume and then just wandered in. They're like, all right,
dude, and it's funny because this is considered his greatest role. And I'm like,
it's probably the best one I've seen. But it's
tailor made.
Yeah,
right. And don't get me wrong, this is a lot more sophisticated than Rio Bravo, which we watched last year.
Correct.
And
also,
and that's all
John
credit
Ford,
to John Ford. But I just think I don't know why Rio Bravo just seems dorkier.
Yeah, it's because it is. It's trying to. At that point, the cat was out of the bag with kind of like the paradigm shift of what westerns are. It was so had that hokey music and everything was like, shucks, you know. Just
I almost remember Rio Bravo being a musical for some reason.
I know. I get it mixed up with Seven Brides for Seven Brothers, right?
Yeah, right.
Kind
of. That vibe. Yeah, right.
Anyway, so he's got Martin, who's like this adopted kid that he's a young adult. And so they all go on this mission to try to get these girls back by chasing around these Comanche tribe around the area. And eventually it narrows down to it's just Martin and Ethan over time. And they're looking, and it's like years. They're on this trail. Ethan, he's got the sweetheart, but he's out there looking because it's like his adoptive sister that's missing. They find the one girl has been dead. And so forth and so, but they just spend so much time looking, and hence the searchers. It's like their kind of quest and their purpose to find Scar, this one white man in red face paint.
Yeah,
that is this evil Native American tribe leader that took her. They eventually, anyway, long story short, they eventually find her, and she's like, "No, I'm a full blown, it's cool. I'm part of this now." She went from being 8 years old to 25 years old, but it's been 5 years here. But,
I know, right.
Martin still wants to save her because she's brainwashed and taken or whatever. And everyone else is like, oh, she's laying with a Native American man. We better just kill her and put her out of her misery.
I know. Oh my God. I know. There's so much.
It
really is so.
It's
so classic. It really is just that quote unquote term, it's so wild to be using the framework as savage, and then it's just that's the behind the scenes thought behind it. It's just they were oh, there was a civilization, and there was people who were nomadic and who totally the indigenous folk were scary then, and so that it's so weird to see that you're saying the 50s. The 50s mentality is oh no, there are good ones out there, but there were bad ones too that were super scary. And then so it's almost kind of this they're oh, we're taking creative liberty, but we're expressing a story that existed. And I'm none of this existed. It's I know, it's wild. It's anyway.
I mean, even so, I'm fine with all that, but it's just it gets to a point where it's I don't know, they're not.
No,
it doesn't.
It's
it doesn't serve anything in the story. Anyway, let me
right,
finish.
Exactly. I know what
this is.
This is a crazy epic though. This is this is wild. It takes place over what you said 8 years or something.
Yeah. Which I kept often thinking of Lawrence of Arabia, which is 10 times better, but just big old school epics like that. You know what I mean? Obviously, and so eventually. Martin's got his side fling that doesn't really matter, and she's about to get married, and that's a whole issue, but it's kind of inconsequential. And then they eventually are oh no, we have to save Deborah. And then another group's no, we got to kill her, and we got to deal with this Scar tribe once and for all. So they go in there, and they get in this big shootout with these Native Americans, and Martin saves Deborah. and they think that old Ethan is gonna go kill her, and then he eventually kind of comes around and he does save her, and he brings her back to. They're like family relatives. I don't remember their exact relation, but the parents of Martin's girlfriend.
Yeah, I really don't remember.
He
It was kind
brings
of funny. Like
brings them back.
there weren't that many
there.
characters, but my God, it's like I didn't know exactly who was all related.
There's
I think it
Mose,
is kind of just yeah. I know, yeah, crazy Mose, but it's like I do think that they were just kind of like all
I think
quote
they're
unquote like found family and kind of like adjacent like family. Like his brother got killed or whatever, so it's like
his
anyways,
brother
it
was the
doesn't matter.
main. Yeah, it definitely feels. Yeah, it's like they're tangentially connected to like they grew up together, right? So they're like close family friends, and so Deborah goes back to live there. Martin goes there, and it feels like a closure, and it ends with Ethan's character kind of like he did save her and did something good, kind of in like by accident, but he ended up finding a little bit of heart, which was like the only really kind of redeeming point of this movie. Is the ending shot really did illustrate his character in a way that the rest of the movie couldn't, about him being like this like isolated drifter that now that he's saved her, even though it goes against his beliefs, that's like now he has no purpose in life and everything. And so it ends kind of happily, and John Wayne goes back to drift around the South and do things and probably kill more Native Americans and all that. So that's how it goes. That's the gist. You know what I mean? And there's some good bones there. I mean, like underneath there's a really solid adventure epic story, but like we're saying, it's like so concerned about like I'm fine with the character being a racist piece of shit. I'm fine with like a lot of the characters being racist pieces of shit. But the film also constantly is like portraying these Native Americans as either savage killers and idiots. Like they're always just bumbling dummies, and like the one guy gets it, they accidentally buys one of them, and then they immediately are like,
I know
it's a it's a punchline until they're like, well, interrogate her about Scar, and then they're like, yeah, fuck her up, then she runs away and gets killed, and so I don't know. It just I can never. I don't know. I don't get it. Like I get the influence for the time, but I don't get how somebody can watch it now and also be like. Because I don't know, there's just a lot of
even watching
movies.
Even watching it like in the '60s or like in the '50s when it came out, I think that's what's hard for us too. Sometimes I'm like, all right, try to put on my my '50s thinking cap here and like, what was the mindset?
Oh yeah,
and it's just like I'm assuming that it's like it's a lot of dads that are going to see this movie that had. Their grandpa or even their dad, I guess, really their dad, like was like closely related to this kind of like this, this frontier of American West that didn't exist. Like, it's like that's what's fun about Westerns is like, I like watching when they are doing frontier things, like in movies when they do like cattle rides and stuff. And it's like, it's fun to see them do like cowboy tricks. Like, the ending of this movie, they do they raid the camp or whatever into Scars, to do the daring rescue. It's the climax, but there's a lot of like really, really beautiful shots in that. A lot of tracking shots that I'm like, these are
this movie looks amazing.
I mean, and that's the whole thing. And that's what's funny is that the whatever the director is of Lawrence of Arabia, I can't remember, but he was hella influenced by these landscape shots like that, and that was the thing that I immediately was like, oh, okay, this is where like the landscape shot,
because this is filmed in like southern Utah, right? And it's like anyone can film
Arizona and stuff through there, but
anyone could shoot beautiful like landscapes and make it look good. I mean, I said the same thing about Valhalla Rising, but like there is more technically to this that actually like it is well blocked, and it's like I'm trying
to come to this like from me now in the time period I live in, and the Westerns that I admire, even older, but not. See, I can't really think of anything that's like, honestly, like 68 or something, 10 years later from this that I admire. Where I'm like, I don't know of any movie that's necessarily older because they're either just kind of plain and boring, or they're kind of just silly like this.
Yeah, for
But
me, it's like the aesthetics
I think,
of
yeah,
the
the
previous era are
and
good,
the
but like,
storytelling in this, the storytelling device for time passing was actually really dope. Like
Yeah.
I really appreciated having the letters and then like you showing them doing the action, even though what the action they're doing is just dumb as fuck and rude. But it's like them, them with that misunderstanding where like, Martin becomes married or whatever, and they sell it, and it's like I wish that like in a better movie I would have been like, oh, okay, that's a funny misunderstanding, sure. But it's like in this movie it's kind of like MASH, where it's just like the punching down, it's unfortunate.
Yeah.
It kind of just leaves a bad taste in my mouth. But it's a funny misunderstanding, and then it's told through the letter, and so it like goes back, to like the whatever her name was, Lori or something, whatever, the
Lori,
woman
I
waiting,
think. Yeah, Lori.
waiting for Martin to come back, and it's like I liked that romantic part of it where she's waiting, and it's like her character is well thought out, where she's like, I won't wait for you, but then like but she will, there is like subtext in this, like there's a lot of sophistication in this movie, in the storytelling. It's just like unfortunate that the main arc is just honestly to be like left to be desired. Like it is,
Yeah,
it's a lot of
'cause-
them like just kind of walking or like going around tracking, and I'm like, well, there's like 30 minutes of this movie that
that's
is them
my whole
tracking.
thing is because
And it's like, okay, well,
even taking out like, it's like I don't sit here in my throne in 2023 and be like, oh, back then, like I try to understand the context of the time, and also realize that 20 years from now we might be looking at it now and how fucking antiquated shit we've been doing now.
sure.
But so I just try to look at it objectively as just like a piece of filmmaking and a piece of storytelling. And yeah, it's just like at the end of the day, it's just very kind of straightforward. It touches on a couple things that I feel like do more than previous, like more Westerns of the era. So I guess I can see, it does feel like kind of like the end of that era before you get into the 60s and you start getting in more into like, oh, it's like, you got like fucking, like the Wild Bunch and like all the Sergio Leone, like everything where they take away the rose-colored glasses that the 30s through 50s has shown what pioneer life and like Western frontier life was like, and kind of make it more of like this grimy fight for survival, like, but it's like this movie is just shown to be like, it's so clean and crisp, and it does touch on all these things with these characters, but just at a surface level that it does. At the end of the day, I'm like, it's not that deep, and the character is okay, but
Right.
we can't pretend like 1950s. Like there's a lot of other movies that have done, like, it's not like it's so groundbreaking. You know what I mean? Like, I don't know. People talk about this. They're like, oh, this is like the masterpiece. And I'm like, don't get me wrong. It looks great. It's a good Western. It's well put together. But it's just like, I don't know. It's just fine, and kind of at the end of the day. But then because of that, you can't really look past all the fucking racist shit and like just kind of the bad storytelling shit to what's left is like a fine, just an okay movie that looks beautiful. You know what I mean? It's like none of the performances are particularly good. Martin is the quote unquote like moral compass of the movie, but even then, it's
I know,
it's inconsistent.
Right. Well, the only reason he's the moral compass is because he's it's like, man, everything they said in this, half the time, I'm sitting there like, whoa, man, they said some stuff. God, I can't even remember. Like the subtle racism that like it's funny because it's like just rhetoric that John Wayne is saying in real life. Like I know for a fact because he's been quoted saying this kind of crazy shit, like half-breed and shit, like saying stuff that you're like, it's just like, I guess that's where it is. It's like, John, I just can't look past John Wayne's, just his IRL character, like who he is.
That's what's hard
So
too,
watching-
because it's like I'm supposed to be rooting for him. The whole
I thought-
time, the first hour, I'm like, okay, he's a horrible piece of shit. He's just desecrated. He's like desecrated that corpse just to piss off any other Native Americans that come around, and like that's. And I'm like, okay, I meant to hate him now, and then he's gonna grow, and he's gonna have an arc, which barely he does.
He does. No, really, the only arc he has is like
He
he's
doesn't
they
kill
basically just
Deborah,
told
even
him-
though his
Right,
principle is to kill her.
is to kill her. Right, exactly. Like it's all you like. He's
His
one of
arc
those.
is like,
his only
I guess I love her. But
his only
kinda.
arc. Yeah, his only arc is like he's like, all right, I'm gonna. I don't even know. I didn't even really.
Once he saw
I didn't
her
even know
beautiful
why.
white flesh, he was like, I guess she's technically white.
Is that what it is? Is
I
like
don't know.
because he got up close to her that he was like,
I do
now
feel
that I'm
like
this intimate, I can't kill
it's
you.
supposed
Well,
to be like his heart. Like it is like,
you know,
I think it's kind of implied it
apparently-
might be his kid too.
That's the whole thing. I was gonna say. Apparently, it's his child, or at least that's like
there's
the
a-
subtext. But
Yeah, I read
I
that
don't
because the timeline, I did notice before I read that there's like a weird sexual tension dynamic, I mean, for the 50s, between his
Right.
character and his brother's wife. And the age of the girl matches with how long he's been gone from like
yeah,
the start of the Civil War anyway, right?
right, exactly. It's
so-
like because they've never met. Yeah,
Even if it's not like actually his, even if there's nothing there, it's like there is a connection to like his family that's there. And so I think like he sees her and he's like, oh, come on, Debbie. Like, all right. Like he becomes Uncle Ethan again and not just Ethan, the fucking racist killer. He becomes that. And then when he leaves her, like, that's why I think the ending is like the only part that works, but it's such a small amount of redemption for a character that's like, I'm all for despicable characters, but the movie itself is speaking the same language. You know what I mean? And that's my problem.
exactly.
It's like,
and I think that's what it is. Is like the movie is like look, like we're portraying a good guy here. Like throughout the whole thing, they're like he's rough around the edges, yes, but he's a good guy, and that's kind of where it is. And I think that it's really hard because it's easy for us now in 2023 to look at it and be like, well, he fought in the Confederacy, he's a rampant racist, but it's like, but then they're like, oh no, but they were like, you know, there were generals and good people in that army too. You know, it was like it's a nation where it's almost like if you fought on the Confederacy then, and even in the 50s, it's kind of like, well, that's understandable. It's like you were fighting for like other state rights. There's other things, you know, no one, everyone kind of likes to be like, well, slavery was just a little tiny fraction of the war, you know, and you're like, all right, cool. Good for you. But it's also like, I think that's where it's supposed to be like, he is a good character because he didn't kill her at the end. Period. That's it. It's just like, doesn't matter what else he's done. It's just like the fact that like he saw her and then that's his redemption is like, I'm not gonna quickly kill her because that was my whole thing before. And then I don't even, watching it, I was kind of like, why did he?
In a more
Why did he change? But anyways,
interesting movie, because it's like he is a fairly compelling character, but in a more interesting movie, it would make him to be the antagonist that doesn't know he's the antagonist. You know what I mean? Like he thinks he's the hero, he thinks he's doing what's just, and his actions may be, or like his motivations may be just, but his shit isn't. But the fact the movie is so concerned with telling us that he's like the good guy, and
the guy, yeah.
and
I wish Martin
he
like,
cuts the
stopped
bullshit.
him.
Yeah, like he cuts
you
through the
know,
bullshit.
Yeah.
But you know, like he's rough and he doesn't have time for your funeral because he's got to go out and fucking take care of business. But it's just like he's not a good person. But the movie keeps trying to convince you that he is, and the ending is not enough to save it. You know what I mean?
No.
Because it's like the movie is very much in line. Like, and I don't need a movie to come out and be like, oh, this guy, what he's doing is wrong. Like, because it's kind of, I mean, if you're a fucking human being, it's obvious that what he's doing is wrong. But so much of it's the fact that in 1956 or whatever, but it's like Scar, the one Native American with speaking lines, they're like, this guy, we got to get a Union guy. And fucking, these goddamn Redskins can't be part of the Union, so we're going to cast some white guy and paint him. It just goes to show that it's just like, that's just another element to be like, oh, like, what are you even trying to say then? Because it's like, if you're trying to say anything that like, oh, there's like, it's complicated. But you're not trying to say it's complicated. You're trying to say these are the bad guys. You know what I mean?
I mean, this
it
movie,
bleeds
I guess,
into the production, which is a problem.
Historically, I do appreciate this film to look back just for that case in point, where it's wild that existed, but it was like even worse before this movie. Like the fact this movie was like championed that they actually had like true indigenous people.
Oh yeah, they touched.
performing
Oh
in
yeah,
it.
they touched on quite a
You
bit.
know?
You know what I mean? That's what I'm saying.
And it's like,
they
no,
did
no, no, no.
more-
I'm not giving them credit. I'm just saying
I'm gonna
they
give 'em a little
were
bit.
championing themselves, and they were giving
that's
themselves
fair.
credit. In 1956, saying, "Look at us, look at us, hold these people up, and you look how look how virtuous we are." But but it's like, oh, but like you said, a main character. Well, they can't be. It's just, and that's just like, and it's kind of one of those things where it's like, it's not even like they could change that. They had the power to change that, but they were like, no, we won't, though we don't want to because of white supremacy. So it's like, we'll just keep that rocking. And
what are we gonna do? Pay this guy speaking wages?
Yeah,
like
what are we
gonna
gonna
pay a fucking Native American speaking wages? Fuck that.
Yeah, how would we? Yeah, we'll trade them beads, but we won't pay them.
And that's what's
you're
ridiculous. It's like
when people all over the internet are like, that look how good they were for doing that, and I'm like, no, bud,
this is 19.
That's not how it works.
This is 1956. It's not fucking. This is, believe it or not, the movie is set place in the 1860s. It was not made in the 1860s. That's the difference. It's like we have the power of hindsight, and it feels somehow like, I don't know, like grosser because it is so clean and sterile. Like if they would have just taken this exact script and even the performances and look and just got down to the nitty gritty and made it feel real and raw, it would have really worked. But something about Scar is a boring villain that has no presence.
He's not even. Yeah, I was gonna say he's not even a villain. He's literally in like 2 scenes. So it's like
But
it's like what the hell?
Make this tribe of fucking this warrior tribe that's attacking sure that all works, and make it like this hard life. It's like the frontier is dangerous. There's wars. We're obviously invading other people's land, and families are coming there, not really realizing that that's what's happening in that way, and make this more of like a raw, real thing. But I guess that's just my thing, because it's like Westerns weren't that until later. You know what I mean?
Yeah, they're supposed to be clean. I just think it's like, like having like John Ford create this. I don't know. It's wild, man. Everyone just needs to watch the Assassination of Jesse James by the Coward Robert Ford.
That's the best one.
Like,
that's my favorite.
That's
Western,
what, like John Ford didn't live long enough to see the greatest Western ever made. But
he would have loved it.
I don't know.
I think.
Oh yeah, guaranteed. I mean, it's like that's the whole thing. It's like, I guess that's where the whole time I was watching this movie, I was just like, all right, the film historian in me appreciates what I'm seeing in front of me. Like Birth of a Nation, that movie exists, and the preservation of it is important. Where this movie, I'm like, whatever, you don't really need to preserve this, but it's fine, whatever. It exists, and it's telling its story. And this is where it stands. And it's so funny because it's like behind the scenes, it's like everything's so positive, and it just goes to show that like in the 50s, it was. I mean, it's Hollywood is still just white males. That's like, no matter what wiggle room and no matter what the steps we're making forward, it's progress and it's fantastic. But it's also like, it's still majority rules. And this was the 50s. So it's just like,
people look back at the barbarism of now. And so I'm just,
right.
It is what it is. But my whole problem is like, the racism.
It's
sure.
jarring.
If you take all the racist out of this, it's still just a whatever movie. You know what I mean?
That's all well, no, but what I appreciate about it though is like I was like, okay, no racism in it. Now I'm looking at it strictly technically. It's amazing. It really is.
Technically,
it's ahead of the 50s for sure. Like I'm watching this and I'm like, when they shoot that like the night for day. And it's just like, or whatever, day for night, and it's like
it looks pretty much as good as now, which is not great.
I was going to say,
okay.
Nope.
Solid.
Well, no, I'm like, they do it in Nope, and Nope is fucking sick, and it looks so cool in Nope, and it looks really cool in this movie too. I mean, though be it, there are a few times in this movie where I'm like, oh, they like it's kind of like I don't know exactly how you shoot that, but like it's a little too dark. It's like,
yeah, because you could tell they something in the chemical process also. But they did a good job matching it to the sets, which were like, you could tell some of the sets were like that they were lit for night. And
how they lit it.
Supposed to be night, but then but it was cut in between like other shots that were obviously day for night, which were pretty good. And it's like, that's the thing. Technically, this movie looked astounding. Structurally, pretty fucking solid. But like the acting was.
I mean, and I think you go. you used to go to westerns. So that was another thing where I'm like trying to think. I'm like, this is true escapism in the like the whole reason they have them just tracking and stuff and just going around is like that is the escapism where you're like you get to be on the frontier. Like if you're, I totally understand why like some Hollywood kid or some like New York kid going to see this movie is like, holy shit, I get to live this like
well, and it's,
this reality
the sense of
being,
adventure is there too. It's like I'm on an important journey. I'm out
right. And it's like
with
the snow,
nature,
and it's cool because it's all shot on location, and you can feel that too. Like you can see the horses struggling, you can see the actors like struggling. You know, like it's like and we can get we need to start having like an animal abuse section of this because it's like this movie had quite a bit, but it's like. But it's kind of funny. I was watching it and I'm like, wow, those horses are probably, they're clearly being abused. But I'm also like, wow, they're like fucking horses are crazy agile and like super like I don't know, man. I was having my horse girl moment where I was like, horses are so beautiful.
They are the majestic creatures.
There's so much power behind that horse.
He like gets shot and falls down the dune, and the horse like flips over like 3 times, and then just like gets up and is like,
and it just gets
fuck.
Yeah,
like
yeah, exactly.
I'm like, that's a car.
Right back up. I know, really though. Yeah, dude. No, like watching them when they're going through the water, and I'm like, this horse is like, God, they can take you anywhere, man.
How can they swim? They have hooves, man. It's crazy. Yeah, honestly.
Yeah, right.
Yeah, but this, yeah, I don't know, man. Like,
what was the horse's name? Oh, I can't remember. He's like, no, I don't want to take that horse. That horse is yours. He's like pale horse or something. What's his name?
Pale horse. That's sweet.
Old. I know, yeah. Oh man, what do you say? Like Old Scritchy or something?
Oh yeah, Old Scritchy.
Can't remember. He's like, that's your best horse, dude. I know this movie. Like, yeah, the connecting scenes are kind of they're so like telling of the time, which is so funny. That's how it works. It's like as sophisticated as this movie looks, the storytelling is. I mean, it's framework 50s. Like it's totally like each scene is just to move the next one along, and that's how come I guess the back and forth between the letter reading was like that was the most impressive scene to me because that was like pretty creative storytelling. So
yeah, I just
like that. But then,
I know that it's like of the time and stuff. It's just like some of the most of the performances are so like naturalistic. Like they're just very wooden, most of them. John Wayne normally is just like we've said. It's like everything I've seen him in. It's like I hate the guy as a person, but if he was a great actor, we've talked about that before too. I can like appreciate. I know
separate. Yeah, they are.
He's not in this movie. Like he's got its moments, but it does really just feel like he's boiled down to a catchphrase. It's just like that'll be the day. You know what I mean?
Right.
And
right.
That's kind of how this whole movie, because we've talked about before when we talked about in previous Western months, where it's like John Wayne notoriously was like hated Clint Eastwood's type of Westerns because they're like violent and like grimy and all this, which is like what we like in our Westerns. And it's like, I get that this time period was very much about the fantasy. It's about like, oh, look at this simple when you're just a man being a man, living off the land. Like, I get that, but it's just also just doesn't appeal to me, really. You know, like great. I want to go live off the land and be a cowboy. I fucking love Westerns. But this, I don't know. I don't know. Like you said, I get the influence, but I've seen a ton of better Westerns that it's just like, this movie doesn't impress me. And I've seen movies from the era that do pretty much everything this movie does in separate chunks, just better. Like, I've seen better acting. I've seen better writing, more nuanced writing. I've seen I don't know if I've seen prettier vistas. And like, John Ford, credit where credit's due. The dude, like I said, he's a fucking machine about directing like that type of movie of the golden age. But honestly, I've said it before, like I think the golden age, 40s and 50s, is my least favorite era of filmmaking because it is so wooden and sterile. And like that's when all the regulations started coming in, and like you can't, before this it's like film was the Wild West up until the the 30s, and then it didn't start getting to be about art again until the 60s, and so it's just like, and that's when Westerns kind of had their rebirth again in the 60s with thing like Sergio Leone's, like fucking, you know, Good and Bad and the Ugly and all those, and then Eastwood, obviously. So, like I said, this is like the end of that era of Western, and I appreciate it. And it does sort of touch on like these ideas of like, oh, well, maybe it's like, you know, I don't know. This wants to be nuanced in bits, but it's not really. I feel like people that give it that are reading into it a little bit too much, but that's just one guy's opinion. I don't know. I'm bummed. I'm like, I was bummed watching it because on the surface, it's everything I want. Like, it's this movie on paper and visually is fantastic. Like, I don't know. It's a good, good story.
It hits the ground running. Like, that's the whole thing. I feel like I didn't feel the time. So that, I mean, that is a plus, I guess, you know. It's like I felt like the sense of adventure existed, and I think that this is kind of, I mean, I'm glad that it's like a bygone era. I mean, you know, clearly it's like, it's great that we have progress, and so it's like
this was
we're here now.
Heyday of, well, this and shortly after this was like the peak of the Westerns. But Westerns always, every decade has like this resurgence, and they're usually just like lower budget movies, and but because of that, they got to like kind of try a little bit harder. Like, you don't get the big epic Westerns like you did in this, you know, time.
Right. At least you don't get them. You don't get them like, they're not blockbusters anymore, but you get people who are like, they totally subvert your expectations, and they're hybrids, which is great. Because I mean, that's Bone Tomahawk is like, we've done that pod. Go listen to that one. And that like, that's such a dope representation. And like, that feels fictitious.
Yeah.
Right. You know, like it's like, that's what's great is like the racism that exists in that. It kind of like, I don't know. It's like, it serves its purpose. Like, cause that is like Cowboys versus Indians.
Yeah.
But there is, you know, they're like a larger sense of life, and they're kind of they're kind of outliers in that, like, and there's only a few of them anyways.
I don't think film itself doesn't need to take a stance. Like, it doesn't need to create a character and be like, this character's wrong or right. Like, the film can be objective, and making something like Bone Tomahawk, it's just trying to be gritty and grimy and real and horrific to the extreme. Right. And people are so remember it for being so intense and violent in the back half that they forget how good of an actual Western it is. But It's like, this movie has an this movie has a voice that is in line with what the characters are saying, which just doesn't jive for me. You know what I mean? And it's just like, if they would have taken it, if you would have remade The Searchers today, which I know a lot of people would be fucking say is blasphemous or whatever, but if Spielberg, say, remade The Searchers, I mean, okay, Spielberg would make it all fluffy and Hollywood.
I think, yeah. I was gonna say, like, I don't know. I feel like he could probably do that.
I actually wouldn't want it, because he would try and do old school Hollywood. Give it to like S. Craig Zoller, he did like Bone Tomahawk.
I know, right?
But just make it and have it be objective and just tell the story of this family and make it this intimate story about these characters and make it about this redemption arc for this man. That's a fucking good movie. Like, that's a good movie. The bones of a really good movie are here, but I don't know. It's in its own way for me. And it's like, I still really, it's got a full extra star just for being a beautiful Western for me. Just because it's like, I love the genre so much. But it just doesn't really speak to I don't know. It speaks to like the outliers of, you know, Western characters and stuff like that a little bit, but I don't know. Westerns didn't start getting that good until later.
No, really though. Yeah, that's
totally objective. You know what I mean? Like,
this is the Western that my grandpa falls asleep to, and it's just on low volume in a dark room. That it's just on Turner Classic, and it just kind of plays.
You know what it reminds me of? And I was gonna put the clip on, but I don't want to because it drops a hard F word and not fuck. But do you remember Running Scared? Have you ever seen that movie with Paul Walker? So.
Oh yeah, hell yeah.
The one,
of course,
the kid in it, the antagonist is obsessed. He's a Russian guy, and he's obsessed with John Wayne movies. And so he's always watching John Wayne movies, and he has a tattoo of John Wayne on his back. And the kid in it, to piss him off and get him to like hit him, he's like John Wayne was a the friendly
Yeah.
but
Yeah.
that's what I was thinking this whole time, and I'm just like just to fucking get at this guy, this
Well,
like,
I mean, I just love- I mean,
machismo, like it's just this such like we're not even
What is it?
we're not
Is
even
it-
gonna talk about toxic masculinity, you know what I mean? Like we talk about it
Is
too
it
much.
does MDC have that song John Wayne's a Nazi?
Oh yeah, dude, Millions of Dead Cops, hell yeah.
Yeah,
Yeah.
God, they're so good, dude.
So good.
Yeah, that's yeah. So it's like I don't know. That's whatever I don't know if we've said this exact thing, but wherever you stand, if you're on John Wayne's side, then I don't know why you're listening to this podcast.
Yeah, whatever.
I don't know.
mean,
I doubt you've made it this far.
You
But-
can again, like if he was a great performer, that'd be one thing. But it's like there are great.
He's definitely quantity over quality for sure.
Oh yeah, for sure. I mean, there are other performers anyway. But what?
He's been in a lot.
To be positive though, what was your favorite part of this movie? What do you think?
I mean, aside from that, like that storytelling element with the letter, I really do. I like the portrayal of food in this and water. That was actually something that I kind of like noticed, which is kind of rare in movies. I mean, unless it's like deliberate, like where in the Inglourious Bastards he drinks milk and like
That's
shit
a
like
good-
that, where
that's
it's
a
like
good point, though.
super
Yeah,
Inglourious.
I didn't even think
But it's
about
like it's cool. There's like a scene because the whole time I'm thinking I'm like fuck, this is like that immersiveness where I'm like, oh man, like living on the frontier was fucking hardcore. And like go see Meek's Cutoff because that movie like gets it down perfectly too. And anyways, so it's so cool. Like it made me like want to watch like Little House on the Prairie. Like just like
Yeah.
it just feel like man, the frontier is cool. But anyways, like there's that scene where he's drinking off the rock. There's like the rock coming down. He fills the canteen, and it's like.
It does
that, like,
add to the sense
and
that they're out
it
there in
definitely-
the wilderness
and when-
for years
but when they're
at a time.
when they go to New Mexico, when they're in New Mexico and they go to that like I don't know, little cantina area, and he's eating the food and stuff, and it's like shit looks so good, and he's like I'm so hungry, and like you can tell he's hungry, and then he doesn't want him drinking alcohol for some weird reason because I don't know, John Wayne's a Puritan racist, and so he's like I don't want you I don't even understand why don't you want to drink alcohol.
They don't have
Anyways,
him drink. The one guy at the wedding too is like they're going to drink, and then they're like, nah.
Yeah.
The guy literally
Yeah.
wags his finger at him like, don't you do it. And
yeah, and I'm like what the hell are you
that
talking about? You
is
guys are like taking
another-
laudanum and shit.
Yeah,
But-
that's another point that this movie feels like the fucking 50s. Because if this was the
Uh-huh.
1800s, everyone would be hammered. Like people
yeah.
drink like a whiskey bottle a day.
Right. No, I mean it legitimately was like I mean yeah, and it's a different kind of liquor then, but it definitely existed. And anyways, people are drinking. But it's cool because he's got that alcohol and he like smells it, and he's eating and he's like, let's get out of here. And he like throws it on the fire. And it like does not look like it was meant to go.
No,
up
it
in the
went,
flame.
yeah, like,
It was like a grease fire, like it blew up, and like that, like Crazy Mo was trying to put it out and stuff. And I'm like, that right there was cinematic magic, where like they're rolling, he does the scene, and then it's like one of those things where like the guy with the fire extinguisher on the end, they were like, hold off, we'll get the shot.
there's definitely
Like,
some
we'll get the
looks.
shot.
Like as soon as it went up, they're like behind camera, they're like, oh fuck, do we?
Yeah,
Are we gonna call cut? Like what are we doing? Like,
Yeah, and I noticed that happened a lot in this, and that's actually something that's pretty cool. Like I loved that like this was like a super high budget movie, but it's coming from kind of like a run and gun director from back in the day, and so it's got a lot of like I see like there's like shot corrections that you notice, and like that like
Yeah, I
a
noticed
lot
that
of there's
too,
a lot
actually.
of like there's just a lot of that like that old movie magic that little details where it's like I never want to watch like the full movie, but I do love those like the little details where it's like it's not planned. Like nowadays I feel like a script supervisor has to like comb through shit. It's like if you make a Hollywood movie, it's like there's like one person to literally do everything. And so it kind of like changes. I mean, we still get some of the movie magic like with Children of Men and shit. And like, you hear about it. And that's typically buzz for movies. It's like something happened and it's like, oh, this huge production, this huge shot got ruined, but it's like they still got it. Anyways, still that exists, but I feel like it happened a lot more back in the day because they were shooting a lot more live and like a lot more like huge shots where it's like,
Yeah,
well,
they're
we
like,
have
just
to get
do
this
it.
shot.
Yeah, just do it. You know what I mean?
Yeah, and there's something to be admired about like kind of no regulations. Like clearly it's I like people being safe, but it's still
No,
kind
I
of
agree.
like fun to see that.
What did we
And I
talk
love that,
about
the fire stuff.
recently? We talked about another movie where we were like that exact same sentiment. We're like, man, I wish when you didn't have to do regulations, but It is.
What was
It is
Is
nice.
there something maybe I can't remember? Like children actors or something. I don't
There's
remember.
something where they're just like, yeah, they're just fucking getting raw. But
yeah.
yeah, I don't know. The
Yeah.
ending.
What-
the ending
what-
was my
what'd you
favorite by far. Like,
Yeah. I mean that is like that's the
the
whole
final
literally
shot of him in the
literally
doorway.
all I knew. So like my dad liked this movie, but it was more like he was just kind of like he always credited it as being like the last like 50s western, the last golden
And
age western.
it feels like that. You
And
know?
totally. And I do love like because he always said like there's the shot of them coming in. It's like it's closing the door on John Wayne. Like that's like it is kind of just like his character's done. And so now it's like a new generation. I don't
think he was relevant after that because Rio Bravo came out after this, but he did feel like paunchy and washed up in Rio Bravo. And in this,
Right.
he like definitely was just like being himself, but you do feel like a little bit more effort from him in this compared to like Rio Bravo, which is my most recent frame of reference.
Yeah. Damn, he's in so many goddamn movies. That's
He's in a
nuts,
lot,
dude.
man.
He's almost 200 movies up into the 70s.
Dang. But just that small, like, and I don't think it was on his part. There's definitely a John Ford directing, but like,
Yeah.
him reach like the shot of him in the doorway, but then him reaching across and grabbing his arm in that way. That's like almost kind of like a abashed look for this character. Really affected me in a way that I wasn't expecting for this movie. That was really good because I was like, oh, now he's like lost and he's got this like small sense of pride, but also it's just like, what do I do? Where do I go now? And it is just like this end, but it's just like
they're trying to capture the man with no name. I mean, that's why I respect Clint Eastwood so much. It's like he took what John Wayne kind of wanted to be. It's almost like John Wayne thought of himself as being like the stoic, just every man, and that perfect epitome of like just white supremacy, white perfectness. And he like thought he was just so cool. Where Clint Eastwood took it and he's like, well, we're going to make it a little more subtle. And Clint Eastwood had a little more youth too. He was younger than John Wayne. So it's like, I think he came in and he tried to have more of like embodiment of the cool, but taking it from the 50s of the like Rebel Without a Cause style, where it's kind of just
Right.
like, he's like, I'm attractive, but gritty. And you don't have to run your mouth to prove your worth. Like that was something I enjoy about Clint Eastwood films. He doesn't always think he's right, but he performs well under pressure. And so it's like, his actions speak louder than his words.
I'm sure we'll as the month goes on, I'll be surprised if we don't watch at least one Clint Eastwood movie either.
I know I'm sad that
directed
dude. So like I've seen that movie enough times
I've
that
been
I
wanting
didn't
to
vote
rewatch
for
it
it.
though, because
But,
it's like
yes,
I haven't
it's
seen
always
it in
a
a while
classic.
either, and I'm like, yeah, it's good. I'll just put it on another poll anyway. But there's so many Clint Eastwood movies.
Yeah.
But even though we prefer Clint Eastwood, it's like we don't like him as a person either. But what he brought to the genre into his films, I think, is just way more impactful and purposeful and with effort.
Yeah.
than John Wayne.
Yeah.
John Wayne just does feel like he's like, I don't know.
I mean, he felt
specific.
old in he felt like kind of outdated in the 50s, and so it's just kind of like that's where I'm like watching him as like a creator. I just Godard liking him so much is so weird to me. It's such a weird character because none of his movies have archetypes like that. Like none of his, I don't know. It's like macho, always right. I don't know that. Yeah. Anyways, John Wayne is we've discussed him at length, and I think that
and I will say I'm not planning on putting another John Wayne movie on any of the polls, so that's it.
Okay, cool. Thank you. Yeah, that's cool.
I don't plan on it.
I am happy. I am happy though to like kind of like really reaffirm that like John Wayne doesn't really have this is his greatest performance, and it's just kind of not. It's just kind of like not a performance. It's kind of like a Jean-Claude Van Damme style where he just comes and he just reads lines. I don't know.
Yeah.
It's like, yeah.
And this is going to be a movie like we've talked about before, where it's like as time goes on, it's going to probably get better in my memory because I'm going to forget about of like a lot of the moment-to-moment stuff, the subtle, all the racial subtleties and the fucking just like lame dialogue, and I'm going to remember like the vibe, the searchers, the epic, the fucking vistas. Like that's what I'm gonna remember.
Yeah,
And
the tension too. There is good tension in scenes,
Yeah.
but yeah. Anyways, like it's all things that yes, I'll remember it as being like this, but it'll always be a film where I'm like, I don't really recommend it because there are better westerns. So
yeah,
that's-
I think so too. So anyway, that's John Wayne's The Searchers. Hot take, I know. I guess apparently. So
yeah, right, sure.
So,
I don't know. I think nowadays it's probably not quite as.
No.
We're not in 1960, you know, like yeah.
that's true. I know you'd be surprised. A lot of people on Letterboxd are still like, this is the fucking five. If I could give it 6 stars, I would.
Wild.
But I don't know. Anyway, it's like even then. So, but anyway, stick with us with more westerns. We're getting back on track, so I haven't done the poll yet, so I don't know what we're watching next week. But I'm gonna go actually probably do that right now, or I'll probably put it up tomorrow so people actually see it. And then by next week we'll be totally back on track to doing the poll like the previous weekend. I just don't want to have 2 polls running at once, basically. You know what I mean? So
Totally, yeah. But if this poll hasn't finished yet, wait, what? This poll?
no, we're done here. I just haven't put up next week's poll, which I'm going to put up tomorrow, and I'm going to only have it run for like a day or two. Which normally I put the polls up on Sundays and they go till Tuesdays. It's Tuesday now when we're recording, so yeah. So stay tuned.
right.
Figure out what other westerns we're watching next. We'll probably get into like some more modern westerns, and then like some like western mixed like movies, westerns disguised as other stuff type of things. I don't know.
Yeah.
We'll see. There's a lot out there for it, so I'm into it. I'm getting the vibe. I'm only Western town over here, so I'm gonna go play some Hunt Showdown right now.
I know. I'm gonna go play the video game Weird West.
Yeah.
Yeah, like it's all Western themed stuff. I don't know. It's fun. It's like I enjoy a little cowboy roughing up.
Yeah,
but
so I know you guys are wasted from doing all the October movies. So thank you if you made it this far. Thank you, and go to the Reddit and everything, and come let us know what we should watch, and come vote and all that good stuff.
Hell yeah. Vote and then join us on Patreon. We've got bonus content coming up, and we're kind of revamping Patreon. It's all moving, and it's all moving and flowing, and you know, it gets going.
And grooving, baby.
And you guys help us out there. So much support. Thank you.
Thank you.
I love you all. Stickers are coming. You know who you are.
Yeah.
Awesome, guys.
All right, yeehaw.
Yeah.
See y'all down the dusty trail.
They were really dusty in that fight, though, and that was cool. That seemed
I like.
authentic.
That's what I'm saying. I want my westerns dusty. I want them like. I'll put the
I
proposition
know, where this-
on one of the polls, but the fucking proposition
I
where they're just
know.
like covered in flies and shit.
Yeah, the
Like-
proposition is fucking good, dude. Yeah,
I'll put
See,
it
that's
over.
I like when the tension is like more. The conflict is between characters and not like large groups of people. I don't know. Anyways,
Yeah, westerns in my mind. That's it's
right.
That's just our subjective stuff. That's how we like our westerns. So.
Yeah, exactly.
If you like your westerns crusty and clean and full of racism, then that's
Then there's a
there's a
myriad
ton of them for you.
of
Yeah.
films for you. Yeah,
Probably have a John Wayne tattoo on your back, and you're like, I feel attacked.
Yeah, right. No, yeah. Get your fill. No, this
all
this
good.
month is Turner Classic, baby. You get on there. Go to Fossum Fossum. There's a bunch of westerns on there. It was crazy. All right, you guys.
Goodbye.
This has been great.
There it is.
I know. Yeah, you can cut all that. I stopped.
Nope, I'm stopping now. Bye bye.
Okay, cool.